Welcome back. Yesterday afternoon, the National Assembly gave government the green light to start spending on the 2012-2013 budget. The parliamentary process started in February this year when Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan introduced his budget to Parliament. That process was followed by the budget vote phase in May, when the National Assembly debated the spending plans of each individual department and state entity. And while this was going on, the Standing Committee on Appropriations also scrutinized the budget allocations to each department. But this process is now nearing its end. Yesterday, the Standing Committee submitted its report to Parliament for consideration, and the National Assembly could then debate the first reading of the appropriation bill. It then considered the votes and schedules. But for now, we focus on the first reading debate. Members of the National Assembly raised their concerns about the way in which departments spent the monies allocated to them. The concern was that the money spent had not matched the actual performance of those departments. The chairperson of the Standing Committee on Appropriation, Mr. Elliot Sigoni, said the poor performances demanded a closer monitoring of departments by Parliament.
The quarter expenditure report will reveal that though spending has improved, some departments spent as little as 50% at the end of December, but were able to exhaust the budget 3 months later. That is called fiscal dumping, Honourable Speaker. But it does not achieve, because it does not achieve those predetermined objectives, although the money has been spent. The Public Service Commission raised failure by the senior management to sign performance agreements and the lack of requisite skills. Their presentation concluded that, I quote, one, the managerial shortcomings also emerged from the Public Service Commission's analysis as being a major factor, and managers' focus on processes and the associated emphasis on activities and outputs, meaning that the outcomes and impacts are neglected. And the consequence is that the programs do not achieve their intended results. Two, the lack of clear consequence for non-performance. All contribute to a skewed incentive structure that has distortedly downstream effects on overall public administration, close quotes. Therefore, Honourable Speaker, the establishment of the Department and Monitoring, the establishment of the Department of Monitoring and Evaluation and subsequent directorates of monitoring and evaluation in various departments should go a long way towards addressing these challenges.
Another area of concern to those appearing before the Standing Committee on Appropriation was that the education system did not always result in the employment of black graduates, even those educated at the same universities as their white counterparts. There were also spending problems on programs to create job opportunities and with adequate funding of new state departments.
However, Honourable Speaker, the investment in job-creating programs, amongst others, like the expanded public works program, working for water, working for fire, community works program, etc., were not always spent, but instead redirected to other government activities. If we are to achieve the 5 million job opportunities over 5 years, Parliament must monitor the implementation of these programs more closely. The other important objectives, Honourable Speaker, should be the constant review of the budgets of the new departments established in 2009. Some of these departments, for example, Department of Energy, Department of Children, Women and People with Disabilities, have complained about their baseline budget.
Mr. Sigoni said one of the achievements during was the introduction of the National Health Insurance, which meant universal access to health care to everybody in the country. The ANC also welcomed measures to improve financial management in the public sector to combat fraud. Mr. Maria Swart of the DA said spending on priorities set by government had failed because money had not been spent wisely.
Unlike the DA-run Western Cape government, where all departments at the province achieved clean audits, we still find a continuous stream of qualified audit reports of government entities. Incurring irregular, wasteful and unauthorized expenditure continues unabated. In the main, many government departments are failing South Africa's diverse population with service delivery. Let's then look at the facts. At a presentation to the Standing Committee on Appropriations, the Public Service Commission informed the committee that many departments are spending their allocated budgets at year-end to fairly high levels, but failed to meet the predetermined performance objectives or outputs set by themselves in their own strategic and annual plans. I highlight just a few of the departments mentioned by the Public Service Commission in this regard. SAPS, for instance, spend 100% of their budget, but they only achieved 59% of their performance targets. The DTI, 93.6% budget spent, 51 performance targets met. Justice, 97.7% spent, 50% outputs met. Basic Education, 89.4% spent, 47% met.
Mr. Swart added that in spite of poor performances, huge bonuses were paid to staff. He said departments blamed the lack of capacity for poor performances, and yet they failed to fill the funded vacancies available to them.
Instead, they often prefer to make use of consultants. In the few departments I've just mentioned, their consultancy fee payments amounted to nearly 870 million rand, yet very little skills transfer took place. It's an indictment that we have serious unemployment, yet departments fail to fill even the most basic of vacancies. A major contributor to the problem we experience in this regard is the policy of job for pals, often leading to inefficient, unqualified staff members being appointed to and holding positions which they are incapable of handling. They are nevertheless protected by COSATU at all costs, irrespective of the consequences. And talking of COSATU, they obviously claim constitutional rights for themselves, which they begrudge everybody else. When they have protest marches, they do not only march, but they also break down everything in their path, and they claim this as their democratic right. When the DA marches, peace.
More issues were raised as the debate continued. Mr. Leonard Ramatakane of the Congress of the People asked whether a developmental state such as South Africa could afford an ever-increasing public wage bill with huge leakages of funds because of corruption.
We are not getting value for money. As a nation, we invest about 20% of government budget towards education. We spend more per capita GDP on education to similar middle-income developing country, but our education system is a disgrace. Our education system is a high cost and low output system where there is a systematic problem ranging from poor teaching salary, poor teaching in general, underqualified teachers, poor school infrastructure, declining quality of matriculants.
To a large extent, Honourable Speaker and Honourable Members, this budget, and for the last 18 years, in fact to a total extent I might say, this has been a budget of the executive. It's not a budget of Parliament. And we in Parliament here represent the people. And I hope that by next year, we can take the wishes of people on the ground, we can consider service delivery protests and other complaints that come from people on the ground and influence the budgets of various departments.
After the break, we hear what the final speaker on the ANC list, Ms. Lumka Yengeni, had to say before we recap on the minister's response to the debate.